What's up, people? In this video, I'm going to show you my new tool with which we can create unique things for any car, whether to modify it or to repair it, and we're going to make a super exclusive piece for the Lion. Don't miss the video because I've got a new project and I'm going to reveal it at the end of the video. I know you're going to kill me for getting another car, but I just couldn't let this one slip away, and I know many of you are going to like it. Those of you who follow the channel know that thanks to 3D printing and 3D scanning, we have repaired things like the headlight of this Mazda, which was missing a tab that was almost impossible to recreate. With a 3D scanner and a printer, I was able to replicate the piece from the other headlight and adapt it to this one, making it look almost original, and we left the headlight looking like new. On the motorcycle, we have also done several 3D projects, and one of them was modifying the seat by making a replica of the T-Max seat. Thanks to the scanner, I scanned the seat and was able to manufacture a 3D piece that simulated that part over there, and we left the seat with the support for the pilot's back. And so I made a unique seat for the CB500X, and I also did several 3D projects for Lion Kani, but the most noticeable one was making a rear diffuser thanks to the scanner. I scanned the bumper and manufactured some parts with the printer that fit perfectly in the rear bumper. All these 3D printing and scanning projects were done with a scanner designed for small items, and I approached the 3D design without much knowledge. However, in this video, I'm going to show you my new 3D scanner with which we are going to create very large things in the workshop. This scanner from Creality is the Sierra Scan Rasp, and just by the case you can tell that what's inside is quite serious. This scanner uses blue light and infrared light, which is suitable for very small objects or for very large ones up to 2 meters. We can even make a complete car by doing it in several scans. This scanner works with the PC, so it brings everything necessary for the connection and also includes these circular stickers that I will show you later for what they are. It also comes with this plate that is used for calibrating the scanner. To get the scanner working with the PC, we need to connect it to the USB and also to the power supply, then install the program and perform a small test to see if the PC recognizes the scanner. And now that we see the scanner is working well, we are going to do a test on the Lion. I have a problem with the Lion, which is that the wheels stick out too much from the fender, but I can't remove the spacers since they were put in place to prevent the brake caliper from touching the rim. So the wheel setup and braking are not very good. Therefore, to be able to pass the inspection, because I am homologating the car, I have to put on some rubber flares that are glued like this on the edge of the wheel arch, which would only be for the inspection since they look very ugly on the car to leave them on all the time. The idea with the scanner in the future is to make some flares for the fenders that look original to the car. Before we start using the scanner, we need to calibrate it, which is super easy with the plate that comes with it for calibration. Once the calibration is done, we just have to press the play button and we can start scanning. Here, what I want to do is a test with the fins to see if the scanner really scans large objects. But the surface needs to be prepared a bit. You can't just scan and that's it. Since the surface of the car is shiny and we are using infrared scanning, the car cannot shine. So, to get more information from what we are going to scan, we are going to use dry shampoo from Mercadona. Yes, just as I'm saying, hair dry shampoo. This spray shampoo ultimately becomes a white powder that helps to matte the piece and makes the scanner work super well when using infrared scanning, and then it cleans off quite easily and we don't damage anything when removing it. Right now we are using the scanner in infrared mode, which is designed for small things, but as you can see, the scanning of the fin comes out perfect. We can even see everything we have scanned in color. But this scanner has a blue light mode, and that's what these stickers are for. We need to stick these stickers on the part we are going to scan, as the scanner will recognize them and allow us to move much more easily over larger surfaces. And if you need to rescan a certain area because something was left unscanned, the scanner recognizes the points and you will be able to do it again in that part without any problem. As you can see, when I scan, some lines appear that record the information. You need to move very slowly so that these lines can capture the information we want to scan, and that's it. Since what we want to manufacture are parts that will go on top of the fender, we do not need to scan either the interior of the wheel arch or the complete rim or anything. Just enough to be able to design those parts and that's it. But if we wanted to scan the entire letter, the scanner can do it without any problem. One good thing about this scanner is how versatile it is because we can scan, for example, an entire car, as well as smaller interior parts or, for instance, wheel covers to repair pieces that have broken, to redesign them in a different way. The scanner can scan objects from 5 America Kaisa to Kakanalkata, and it does all this with a precision of 0.02, meaning that the piece we scanned doesn't even need to be modified, as it is exactly the same as the original we scanned. The scanner can scan at 60 frames per second in blue light mode, being the only scanner to date that incorporates this technology, making it superior to scanners from major brands like Hongstar or Repo Point. Now comes the complicated part, which would be designing this, but I don't have enough control over 3D design to be able to make these pieces. And it's something I want to learn about, as one day I came across this Instagram account where they were making unique racing kits for any type of car using the scanner and 3D printers. And I am clear that this is something I want to be able to do in the workshop, to record content and to manufacture unique parts for any car that comes into the workshop. So for now, While that day comes when I learn to do work like this, let's do something smaller for the car. There is something about the Lion that I don't like at all, but I put it in as a temporary measure to be able to see the car's engine information, and it's the gauges. As you can see, this frame that I put here, apart from the fact that when you're driving on the road you have to divert your gaze to see it, is super shoddy since I put it there to make do and it's screwed on poorly. And I don't like it at all. So since we have a scanner and 3D printers, we are going to make one to go on the dashboard that looks original to the car or at least integrates better. Just like we did with the fin, we place the little stickers in the area we want to scan and start scanning that entire part of the dashboard. As you can see directly on the dashboard, we are using the blue light scanning method. I skip putting the dashboard and a dry shampoo for the hair, and this way it is much simpler. Here, we also don't need to scan the entire dashboard. Just the piece where we want to place the gauges is more than enough to create the design. What I use to make the 3D pieces is an online program called Tinkercad, which is like a paint program for kids, but for 3D design. Well, we can use it to make a piece like the watch holder, but for making something like wheel arches or any large body part, it's not really suitable. To create our piece, it is as simple as taking parts from the list we have next to us and shaping them to the size we want, then merging them together. And what we are going to do with the dashboard is use it as a negative mold to eliminate that shape. In our piece that we have created, we have the shape of the dashboard. With this program, many things can be done, but it is limited for many others. However, for things like this, as I said, you can manage quite well. After a couple of hours sitting in front of the computer, this is the first design I made for the clock holder. To be honest, I am not convinced at all. I didn't even print it to see how it would look in the car because it seemed too bulky and looked very out of place. So I started browsing Google for ideas to place the clocks and came across the Sirocco R, which had them in the center in a slightly more integrated way. And as it happened, I had a dashboard from a Lion in the workshop from one I made parts for a few years ago, so we could use this dashboard as a guinea pig before breaking mine. To start, the idea I had was to cut the dashboard so that the gauges would be a little more integrated and not stick out so much on the dashboard. So we start with masking tape to make a template so that when we have to cut the dashboard that is installed in the car, it will be easier for us and we won't ruin it and everything will be better measured. Now that we have the entire area taped off, we are going to mark the square that we will cut in the dashboard. This square needs to be large enough to fit the 3 gauges, so we have to measure the gauges and leave enough margin to ensure that we can make the piece and that everything fits well. The dashboard of the Lion has a synthetic leather upholstery on top and a foam filling, so we cut little by little and first remove the fabric part, then we empty out the entire foam section. Then we will also have to cut the plastic from the bottom, but it depends on the type of support we make, as we will have to remove it in one place or another, so for now we just empty the foam and leave it like that. The idea is to cut the dashboard so that the clock can be placed a little lower and doesn't stick out as much as I mentioned before. This way it looks more integrated into the dashboard. And now we are going to scan this area, so we put the round stickers and scan this entire part of the dashboard to have it in digital form and not have to take 50 measurements or deal with the dashboard next to the computer or anything. By scanning it, we already have the digital version on the PC and we can create the part we want without needing the dashboard. The first thing we are going to design is a custom base for the space we have cut out, and on this base we can create what would be the support for the clocks. This support that I am making now is much more elaborate than the one I made initially, and it is taking me quite a bit more work. But as you can see, I am using the same program, and as I mentioned before, it is indeed useful for small things. This program requires a lot of imagination since all it gives you are some shapes, and what you do is modify them until you create the piece you want. And if you have patience, you can achieve things like this watch holder that I just made. Now that we have our piece created, we can send it to the printer. Here I had a problem, which was that it wouldn't fit in the printer horizontally, and I had to place it vertically, but printing it that way didn't appeal to me much. So I thought about removing the spaces in the middle and making it a little smaller so that it would fit in the printer. And honestly, I liked it better without the gaps in the middle, and on top of that, it didn't fit in the printer, so much better this way. Once we have the printer set up, we hit print and we are going to print this with cheap material to make a test since I don't think it will work on the first try, and if we need to modify something, we won't be wasting good material. Once we have removed the supports, we check that the watches fit well, and here is the first flaw. The small visor I made for the watches did not please me at all, as it looked very small, and the angle I gave it to make it slightly different from the curve of the watch support just didn't work for me. So we modified that part and made it more pronounced, aligning it with the rest of the support. We also make the little holes for the screws that I had forgotten about. And we send it back to the printer, but this time we print it directly with good material. To print the part, I did it in 2 pieces because the bottom part created a small step and required a lot of support, and I didn't like the idea of printing the piece that way, so I separated the part with the little hollow where it takes the shape of the clock to glue it later. And since it is a decorative part that doesn't bear any load or anything, if we glue it and then sand it well, nothing will happen, so we will do it this way directly. And if you notice, I have cut that long piece into 3 parts and left the middle gap because we need to screw the support through the little hole I left here. If we cut the entire piece of the dashboard later, those screws won't have any grip. So I have cut that part to leave those strips so that it can be tightened properly. Here we also checked that the gauges fit well, and I had a small mistake because the turbo gauge was different from the others and was a little thicker. When trying to fit it into the piece, I took the measurements from the others, and this one was about 0.5 millimeter thicker, so I broke it. But that's okay since it can be glued with adhesive and then it can be sanded down and that's it. So we take the Dremel with some sandpaper, enlarge the hole a bit so the gauge fits, and we're done. And now that we have our piece created, the clocks fit well, let's make it look nice. So the first thing we are going to do is sand it down to smooth out all the printing lines we can, and if there are any imperfections that are worse, we take the Dremel and some sandpaper and smooth out all those areas. Is this an argument? Now we are going to apply spray primer, and we will give it at least 3 to 4 coats to ensure the lines are well covered, and we will let it dry very well because this primer needs to be sanded to smooth the piece again. And to finish, we are going to paint it with a matte black spray and let it dry well, and then we will apply a couple of coats of matte varnish to protect the piece. Small. Way back before we blew it all. Take me back to a place where rough belts at home. Take me back to... While the paint on the piece dries, we are going to start preparing the car to install the gauges. So the first thing we are going to do is remove the cables from the frame. Now we need to run these cables to the center of the dashboard. Therefore, what we are going to do is remove the steering wheel and take out the instrument cluster. From inside the cluster, we have access to reach the center of the dashboard and run all those cables from the corner inward. This idea of placing the gauges in the center of the dashboard was something I had in mind even before putting it in the frame, so I left the cables long enough to reach there. So all we have to do is arrange them neatly with tape so that all the cables inside the frame are not loose and stay well organized. Now comes the painful moment for many, which is cutting the dashboard that the car has installed. As you have seen, we made the gauge holder smaller because it wouldn't fit in the printer, so the template also has to be smaller. So we modify this with the square that it needs for the modified support. We take the template, place it on the dashboard secured with masking tape so it doesn't move. And now here, very carefully cut the dashboard. I say to be careful because when applying force in this bad posture, with the dashboard installed in the car, we might drop the cutter. If we cut the dashboard, repairing it would be very complicated. Now we have another complicated part, which is that we also need to cut the plastic of the dashboard. So what we have to do is place the watches, mark where we need to cut, and here, due to the position and the issue with the glass, we cannot cut with just any tool. So we have to do it with the Dremel and a disc designed for cutting plastic. And the truth is that you have to be very careful cutting the plastic very slowly because if you cut too quickly, it heats up a lot and can get stuck, causing the Dremel to slip. Similarly, when cutting with a cutter, we can cut outside of the dashboard. And now that we have access from the top of the dashboard with the cuts we made, we can route the cables upwards. This is quite easy since you can easily fit your hand in the area of the dashboard and bring them to this part here without any problem. And we would just need to run each wire depending on where we are going to place each watch, connect it to the watches, and put the holder on the dashboard and screw it in through the holes we have left. And now we are reassembling everything we have taken apart from the car. And this is how the watch holder specific to the Sanleon MK1 has turned out. As you can see, the position of the watches does not obstruct visibility while driving. Maybe they need to be a little more oriented towards the driver, but I don't know, I found it interesting that they were in the center of the dashboard. Although I should tell you that this dashboard is a little oriented towards the driver, and when I make it straight, they end up looking a bit off. However, yes, they can be made a bit more pronounced, but well, it's something we can modify in the design whenever we want. In the video description, I have left the link to the scanner, but as I mentioned before, it is a professional scanner. If you want to get started in the world of 3D scanning, printing and all that, on the Creality website, you also have other options that are a bit more low cost, which you have also seen on the channel, like scanners for beginners to start making small things and all that, and to start getting the hang of it and take a step further if you want to get something more professional like what I have. But this will depend on the type of work you want to do. And regarding printers, the same applies. You can get affordable printers to start in the field, and if you want something more professional, you can spend a bit more money and get something with better features.